themselves. And so that part for me is kind of what rounds this whole thing up for me, is kind of they always believe what they tell themselves. And how do you kind of invite them into this story to give them better language to use about themselves, right? So when right? Because the thing is that it's not like we're telling people, where it's not we're selling people like, oh, I do this. Do you need this? It's like, is that the challenge that you have? But I love to go deeper, and I love to work with the people who love to go deeper with me. It's kind of like, what does your customer believe about themselves? What is the story that you want to help them change in their own minds? And now how can we give them language to do so?
Hi, I'm Pam Pryor, and this is the Cash Flow Podcast, where we talk about everything money related in your business. Without further ado, let's jump right in. And welcome back, my cash flow friends. We have another really exciting Know Your Map segment. Remember that here is where we celebrate the power of relationships and how that's what truly shapes our businesses and determines what our successes and failures are going to be. Whether it's mentors or kind of coincidental encounters, these connections are more than just support. They're really crucial to doing business the way we want to do business, and then by default, our cash flow as an outcome from these. So we're going to dive in today with another really cool person on my relationship map, someone I'm very honored to call a friend after a few conversations because we hit it off so much. This is Hanna-Mari in Estonia, and she is a brand narrative strategist. She's got 10 years of experience working with early and growth stage startups, and her experience is really in building the digital products, solidifying the growth funnels, crafting brand stories that sell. And we all struggle with this so much. She believes, and I do too, which is why I'm talking to her, that what the world needs right now is for the empathic and attuned entrepreneurs to lead the pack. And that's what we're all about here, which is why I think we've connected. It's her mission to help soul-led entrepreneurs succeed in a way that aligns with their truest voice and their values. Doing business right is what we call that. She's also the host of the Empathic Advantage podcast, which I have been honored to be on and really, really enjoyed. And it's a show that focuses on empowering empaths to really start telling themselves better stories about what they're capable of. Hanna-Mari, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with us.
I am so happy to be here, Pam. I've been waiting for this moment to have this chat with you for a while now. So I'm just stoked to see what's in store.
Well, I know our audience is going to get a ton out of this because we've talked a little bit about your backstory. So before we even start with kind of a couple questions around relationships, tell us a little bit about how you got here and what you love about what you do today.
Oh, 100%. So I am somebody, and I think it's important to start with kind of our values and what we and I tell this to my clients as well whenever we start working on the brand story. Is kind of like, let's start with your values. What is it that you believe in, right? And so one of my values that I that led me to start my business as well is that some people want creative freedom. I want freedom of curiosity. I am a
Oh, I love
multi-passionate
that.
person, and I just need to be able to go down the rabbit holes as I please. And just because it took me a while to understand that this is something that I do, right? I went to school. I'm actually a bachelor degreed special education teacher. I've never worked a day in this field, but I
I don't know
loved
that I
it
knew that.
because there you go, right? We learn something new about each other
Yep.
every day. So
Yep.
it's I went to school for that because the curriculum was just amazing. It was like a full on scan of the human being. I would study psychology and neurology and
Mm-hmm.
anatomy and physiology.
All the rabbit
How
holes.
Yeah, how the language forms in our brains. How do we learn, right? Because to understand the pathologies, you need to understand how the human actually develops. And
Yeah.
so I went to study it because I just found it fascinating. Never worked a day in that field. Came out and started my career and maybe we'll go down like how exactly that happened. But I started my
Mhm.
career in IT, joined the super early stage startup, saw the startup grow from, I was literally the first employee. So it
Oh,
grew from
cool.
zero employees, zero customers, zero anything, zero product to about 400 people by the time my 5 years there was done, across different locations in Europe, hundreds of thousands of customers, a product across multiple platforms. It was an
You got
amazing
the
ride.
startup fever, didn't you?
I did 100%.
Uh-huh.
Good and bad
There's
in
nothing
there.
like it though. It's
Mm,
like when
that's
people
so true.
describe being buddies in war. There's
Yeah.
nothing like it. It's full of bad, it's full of good, but you never forget those people or that time.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Wow.
That is so true. That is so true. And so it taught me just so much. And then I did all the roles that you could possibly imagine. The marketing, the product. I was there when we were raising funds, leading teams, like all of it. I got like to go down so many different rabbit holes. And
Mhm.
then did a stint in sales, wanted to figure out what that was like. Completely different,
Just rounding out
area.
the skill set basically, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then um went on maternity leave for a little bit, just focused on my family, and then came back, started freelancing again. And so the way that I ended up doing storytelling is because first of all, I've loved stories since the day I could read, basically,
Oh, wow, cool.
Books were my safe
So
space,
you're a big
books and
reader.
stories. Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay.
And my father is an absolutely excellent storyteller. He would make up stories like on the go for
What
us.
a gift. What a
I
gift. I'm a
know.
terrible storyteller.
And so I feel lucky to kind of have inherited his skill set a little bit there with like working
Creativity.
with language. Yeah, working with language and creativity for sure. And so he would make up stories on the fly. Like he would have this whole theme of like a frog family living in the forest and all the different forest animals who were their friends. And he told me like, oh, these are all from a book that I read. And I once asked this book for my birthday, and then it came out that there was no book. He literally
Wow.
made them up as he went along, and I
I'm
had
gonna go
no
down a
idea.
rabbit hole here, which is not at all intended, but I'm doing it because it's interesting to me.
Go for
When
it.
he told you those stories, was there a lot of detail in them? Like, did he
Oh,
describe the
100%.
animals and the color in the house? Like, is that the part that made it so engaging?
He would make it like multi-layered, not even just the detail and the story, and there was a plot and there was like a twist and there was like there's this
Wow.
whole narrative going on. But he actually layered, like we would take long drives to the countryside because our relatives lived there, and we would take like
Oh,
long
cool.
drives over the weekends, and he was a big fan of Vangelis. And then yeah, and then he
Who
would
is
he would
that?
tell a story. The composer.
Oh, 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 oh,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha, gotcha, yep.
And he was a big fan. And then he told me the story, and he said, okay, and the story was about the all the forest folk going to a concert, and the concert was a Vangelis concert, right? I think he
I
probably made up a
love it.
fake name. And then he would like, and then it was a concert, and then he would put like the music on, and the concert would play,
Would
and then he would like,
happen.
and then yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was a multi-layered
It was
experience. Like I got the
immersive.
whole, oh yeah, 100%. So that was
And he
like,
made it up as he went? Like, he didn't
oh yeah.
pre-plan these stories, he
Mhm.
okay, alright, so I did not mean to take us on that little but it was curious to me. Okay, so you love stories.
I love stories, and it's like a sort of like a spine or like an undercurrent that has sort of ridden like there with me all those times, because I love understanding why it is that we're doing something. And when you
Oh, I
start
like that.
asking, why do you do certain things? Then you will realize that there's a story. There's a story that, for instance, the founder is telling themselves about like, why did they start this business? Why is it that they think that this is what's needed on the market? And so whenever I would work with startups, and I would be in this, young startup as well, there was, for better or worse, there was a lot of bro culture, you would call it, right? And they were just like, "Oh, we're gonna go through a brick wall," and then I would just be there on the sidelines, kind of asking, like, "But why?
Yep.
Why? Why are we doing this? Why? Where is it that we're going?" And when I was doing sales as well, I would go like, but why? Why would people buy from us rather than this other
I like
company that
that.
says that they're doing exactly the same stuff, right? And so I came across a book when it first came out, and I think it was like 6 years ago now, um, called "Building the Story Brand" by
Yes, I know
Donald
the
Miller.
book. Yep.
Yeah, that absolutely was like my savior in the sense that I was like, oh,
It's a thing.
that's that's what it is. Yeah, that's what I
Isn't it
believe in.
amazing when
That is.
somebody, like, casts for us in words what we haven't been able to really kind of articulate? I think that's neat.
Oh my god, that is so, so, so amazing when that happens and somebody gives you the language to use and all of a sudden
Mhm,
there's like there was all this unstructured thought in your mind and all of a sudden somebody tells you, "Oh, there's there's a framework for that." And I've figured out that framework and here it is. And so the work I do now is I layer my own, experiences and how I think a brand story should come together and the things I believe in, as somebody as well who has had a lot of struggles with mental health and everything,
mhm.
is kind of like, how do we speak to that part, right? And there's an amazing, and I love the fact that I get to work with a lot of coaches, a lot of educators, a lot of counselors, therapists, and so this is like there's a quote that I love by Seth Godin, and I need to kind of reference it here a little bit. But people
No,
don't
totally good.
believe what you tell them. They rarely believe what you show them. They often believe what their friends tell them. They always believe what they tell themselves. And so that part for me is kind of what rounds this whole thing up for me. Is kind of they always believe what they tell themselves. And how do you kind of invite them into this story to give them better language to use about themselves, right?
I
So when
love that.
right? Because the thing is that it's not like we're telling people, we're it's not we're like we're selling people like, oh, I do this. Do you need this? It's like, is that the challenge that you have? But I love to go deeper and I love to work with the people who love to go deeper with me. It's kind of like,
Mhm.
what does your customer believe about themselves? What is the story that you want to help them change in their own minds? And now how can we give them language to do so?
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm
So
typing that into
that's
the footnotes so that we drop this in the notes for the podcast. What is the story they want to change?
yeah. What
That
is the
that is
story they want
just
to
that's
tell?
just beautiful. So you work primarily with empaths or, folks who really often are challenged with how much they absorb of other people's energy. What
Yeah.
is different about working with an empath than, or are we all empaths somewhere on a spectrum? And it's really just a matter of differentiating a little bit when you work with different people.
I think we're all definitely empaths. We're on the spectrum, like all of us. It's
Mhm.
not like any of us. I don't think is absolutely empty of emotions or unable to kind of like if there's a very strong emotion going on around
We're
them,
gonna
they would be,
Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna feel it on one level or another. But there are definitely people who kind of like pick up a lot of other people's emotions on the way and
Mhm.
everything. In terms of kind of working with empaths as opposed to somebody else, I find that empathic people and empathic entrepreneurs tend to be very vision and purpose driven. They are much less, for better or for worse, they are much less kind of outcome driven in terms of, let's kind of,
Ah,
look at the finances of things and let's like
gotcha,
figure out
gotcha.
how to market like that. To them oftentimes seems to be something like, "Ugh, and I'm gonna like, that's the
Got
sleazy
it.
part,
That's the
that's the
yucky stuff to
yuck."
them.
Yeah.
Got it.
And
So you have
so
to integrate that into their sort of not comfort zone. It's probably a little bit uncomfortable, but into their value system. They have to understand they're not violating their value system by focusing on those things, maybe?
yeah, and it's very interesting as well. I just had a chat with a client of mine, and she's a divorce counselor, or rather, a co-parenting counselor, and she helps divorcing couples to
Ah,
figure
okay.
out
Oh, I
how
like that
to,
reframe.
yeah. she's like, she helps divorcing couples understand how to figure out life in two households, and kind of, that divorce doesn't have to be this horrible thing, that society lets us believe. And
Mhm.
I love working with people like that, first of all. But there's this funny thing she said, I was asking her, like, are you like on any social media sites or anything? She said, like, no, I'm not, anywhere yet. And it seemed to me like she was struggling with the idea of maybe putting herself out there. And it's so interesting because I've had a number of conversations with her where she shares how she thinks about divorce, and because she's gone through it and she has those
Mhm.
experiences, and now she has the certification to help others. And the philosophy behind her business is just so amazing. And it just occurred to me, and I said to her, you are doing a disservice to people by not being there and sharing what you have to share.
Yeah, that is often the case with empaths,
Yeah.
quite frankly. They harbor a
Yeah.
gift and they don't get it out into the world. I think that's a great point, which helps her then feel probably a lot better about what she's thinking and how she's thinking about it.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
so you've been at this business about how long now? Because I'm going to ask you a couple questions around the things that I think are just so important around relationships. But when did you actually kind of say, okay, I'm done with sales, I'm done with learning, I'm done with these things. I want to actually now be this coach. I want to start my own thing here.
So it's very interesting because I'm gonna take a couple of steps back from there, because it's something that I've kind of geared up to do for a very, very long time, very
Oh,
long
so you've
time.
known in the back of your head this was an outcome for you.
It was something where, when I started with, I have this need to follow my curiosity. And I figured out that there is the only way that I can actually do that. I have, as a side, like, I'm somebody who has like, I've been a diving instructor, and I have a sailing license that I just made this, I have
I
a,
love it.
license to sail a boat. I cannot, but this
But I know
it's like
that
I know
licensed,
enough, I know enough to pass the exam, right? And so one spring I decided I'm gonna become a certified beekeeper, right? Like those are the kinds of things I do random things, and this is my freedom, and
Yep.
this is what I need to do. I need to do random things. And I realized that for me to be able to do random things and go down those rabbit holes and kind of make who I am into something that I can actually that can bring back to me is entrepreneurship. But the funny
Mhm.
thing there is, I think a lot of people, and maybe a lot of your listeners can relate to that as well, is kind of the stories that you're telling yourself because of something that you witnessed as a child. I would witness, both of my parents were entrepreneurs, but they
Okay.
weren't really, they would kind of have fights between them because both of them were super ambitious, and there was a lot of
Got it.
conflict that would come out of that. And for me, for my young brain, it was kind of like ambition, entrepreneurship, chasing money, that equals conflict, and that equals,
Mhm.
not
Pain
good
and
things.
angst. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it took me a while to really come out of that, and to really put my trust in myself, to be able to do that. And so I've had my company since 2019,
Okay.
um,
Oh,
but
right before
only,
COVID.
yeah. So I've done some, freelance things, but in terms of the kind of like, yes, I'm actually gonna do the, put my, all of my focus into the story telling business and brand storytelling has been pretty recent because, as luck would have it, I ran out of freelance projects,
Got
and it
it.
was then when I decided, like, okay, like this is
Luck or the universe, one or the other, right? So,
luck
well,
or the
let's go back.
universe.
Let's get that. Yeah, that's a very good point. So let's go back to the start of kind of the entrepreneurial journey, freelancing and or the
Mm.
coaching now. Who's kind of one of the things that I do know is that there are people in our lives who really impact our trajectory. Like, so what was the aha moment when you realized that somebody at the beginning of your journey, you're like, hey, this relationship is the gold. Everything else comes from it, but this is a great relationship and it's really had an impact on my trajectory.
So it's actually two people that I want to, I think, mention here, and it's funny because oftentimes, we neglect to look at the people who are closest to us.
Sure.
Oftentimes you see that, there's this, dude. Sorry to all the dudes out there, but I think you understand the type. There's
Yeah.
the dude on the social media who says, like, here's the daily plan that I followed to make sure that my business is now doing seven figures. And it starts at 4 a.m. with some sort of a meditation, and then it goes on and on and on and on into, like, exercises, and
And
then
that
I have
by
phone
noon,
calls and
you're
da, da, da.
at your desk. Yeah, right.
And I'm like, who's taking care of your kids while you're doing that? Who's writing, Christmas and birthday cards to your mom while you're out there in the gym and doing all those very, very high performance things, right? And so there's the question for me. And so it is very interesting. And I do want to do a shout out to my wife right here and right now, because it was very interesting when I lost, let's say, or my client unfortunately ran out of funds, when I was doing
This is your
freelance
last
product management.
freelance client, sort of? Okay.
And then I was sitting at the end of our couch, and I had made up my mind. I'm going to go into full time entrepreneurship from here. I had saved up some money. I had a runway, and I was like, okay, if ever I'm going to do this, it is now. And I'm going to try and do this. And because, previously I said as well, like, my nervous system, and I've done a lot of, like, anybody listening who is, has the mental health challenges. I think all of us to some degree have them, some more, some less.
Mhm.
But, if you've done
Some
any
aware,
nervous
some
system
not
work,
aware, basically.
some not aware and some aware. Yeah, exactly. And so my nervous system was, like, all geared up to hear, like, I said to my wife, I'm gonna go into entrepreneurship. I'm gonna try and crack this once and for all. You know how long I have tried to kind of, like, kind of get the engine going. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try and rev it up for once and for all. And my nervous system was like, oh my God, she's gonna, oh my God, she's gonna say, like, are you crazy? Are you insane? Are you out of your mind? Have you thought about your mortgage and your family and da da da? And she's like, sure. What do you need? And I was just like, I was bawling at that point. I was crying. I don't know why, but there was such a release of
Oh,
emotion in that moment,
relief,
right?
and yeah, it's I'm gonna tell a little story of my own. My own wife was the same way. I was in my last corporate job, and it was very clear I was not happy, and I've never not been happy at work. Like, I thrive on work. I love work. I love it. I love it. And she had just noticed, like, this. And I came home one day and was just so dejected about a thing that had happened. It was a particular moment. And she said, despite all her nerves about, oh God, what's this going to do to us financially? And since that time, like, she basically said, you have to leave, start your own thing. You love it. And since that time, for the now 8 years since that day, has been completely supportive, even in and around her own fears and concerns and things like that. And that is, I love the way that you say we often forget the people closest to us, because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be in another corporate job being okay. So that is a beautiful story. I love
Yeah.
that. But you said a couple people. Who else?
Yes. So the other person was my very first boss, call it
Hmm.
that. So as luck would have it, I met this guy called Norris. He was the founder of this company that I spent 5 years at, the very early stage startup in the banking industry back in the day. And then I met him at a dinner, and he said, "Okay, so I just founded this company. Like, it's a shell of a company. I have basically nothing going in it, but I have this vision and I have this dream, and I need somebody who can write, and I need somebody who can speak English, and I need somebody who can, just help me do anything and
Whatever
everything that you."
comes up.
Yeah, I was like, I'm your girl. Like, I have nothing going on. I just finished uni. I knew I didn't want to go into special education. And so Norris is this kind of a guy who is just absolutely, um, he's a little bit trigger happy, And at
Okay.
the same time, he is this guy who kind of disrupted because he had never founded a company in that specific area of financial
Okay.
technologies. And the whole premise of the company was that we were building financial services or like a banking service for people who would generally not be able to get access to financial services, especially in the UK. So if you've ever been to UK, if you've lived there, if you're from there, you probably understand. As a new person going into the country, you have no way. It's like a vicious cycle, right? So you don't have a place to live, you
Yep.
don't have a job, you don't have a banking service,
Yep.
not don't
Everything's
have
new. Everything is unknown. Like, having moved around as a
absolutely.
kid a lot, you don't even know where the bathroom is. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so nobody will give you a bank account because you have no address, because
Yep.
you are probably, bunking with somebody like a friend of yours. And then you have to kind of have them like, transfer some utility bills to your name and the whole thing. And it's just ridiculous. And so we started to disrupt that part. And it was so interesting to see because the banking industry obviously is old. It is old. It
Old as the
is
hills. Yep.
conservative, right? And things are done in a certain way. And
And
so
not
now
very
this
open to disruption, might I add.
100% no. That was just on the brink of the revolution, like the fintech revolution that
Yep.
was going on in Europe, like in 2011ish to,
Yep. And just
whatever.
on the brink of DeFi and crypto and all of that stuff at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so we were the first like fully mobile banking experience because we did all of our onboarding through mobile. We were the fully like first fully mobile experience that was that launched in the UK market. And so it was interesting to see this guy because I'm a very I'm quite conservative in the way that I kind of like take my steps, and I am
Mhm.
quite cautious, and there's not a lot of like, push through energy in me in terms of let's just see what happens for the heck of it,
Mhm.
right? And so it was very interesting to be along for the ride and kind of see how this guy would just go through a brick wall because he had no idea that the brick wall was there because he was so new to the industry,
Got it.
and
I
just look
love
back
that.
and go like, "Oh, that was there. Oh, that's
Oh, that
interesting."
hurt.
Right? And now, "Oh, but look, like, there's all these other people who are following me because now there's a hole in this wall,"
I
right?
love that.
And so it's very, very interesting to see what you can accomplish when you just simply don't take no for an answer and you kind of live out of that, energy. And it was very, very interesting to see.
So
Not not
it
least,
had a big impact on your confidence level in doing what you're
yeah,
doing now. I love that.
yeah.
Just it is amazing how watching other people can really, really influence. I love that. It's kind of your wife and your first boss,
Yeah.
um, really made the big difference. So as you modulate, as you move through the business and you've been at it now for a few years, there had to have been a time where you're like at the worst, like, I can't do this. Plowing through this particular thing, self-doubt, whatever it was that crept in. Is there somebody who kind of climbed into that foxhole with you and got you out of it and helped, not necessarily save you, but helped you see things differently? And I really just kind of want to stress for everybody, there are those people who may only come in for a moment and then disappear. So it may be somebody like that, or it may be one of the other two you've already talked about. Anybody like that in your journey?
So there is there's a very interesting thing that has happened when I started this kind of pivoting into this whole brand storytelling
Hmm.
piece. And so I joined a huge business community, which you're a part of,
Hmm.
Amy Porterfield's
Hmm.
Momentum community. And
Huge
it's
is
this thing
right.
where, yes, it is huge and it is magnificent because
Exactly. She's done it the right way.
she has absolutely done it the right way. So you need to take her DCA, which is the Course Builders Academy,
Mhm.
where she teaches everything about course building, online course building. And once you finish that, she will then open the doors for you to kind of get into this.
Mhm.
And I'm going to call it like premium VIP community. And it
Yeah,
was
I
a
think that's
very
a fair
interesting
I think that's a fair assessment. Yep.
it's a very interesting thing that happened, which is like maybe when you went through DCA as well, you found that there was a lot of conversations about like, oh, is it worth the $97? Is it like, oh, let's like maybe reconvene here in this other group and let's just like kind of try and
Yes.
keep this going. And it is very, very interesting. And I was kind of toying with the idea myself in a, at that point. And I was like,
Mhm.
is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Should I go? Should I not go? And then I was like, oh, heck it, I'm going to go. And it was very interesting that I would see how those two groups would kind of diverge at that point.
Mhm.
You could see the quality of conversations and the support
Ah,
in.
interesting.
Mhm. And
So
it
you
was
kind of
then when
watched
I.
both as they emerged from this initial sort of explosion that Amy creates with her DCA course. There are folks who went off and started kind of splinter groups because they didn't want to pay the money. You
Mm,
had a foot in one of those just to see what was up, but then you also joined this community, which has turned
yeah.
out to be such a rarity. Okay, gotcha.
And it is absolutely incredible, what this group has already done for me. And so, a word to the wise, to anybody listening, never kind of lower the bar on the people that you hang out with.
Amen. Oh my gosh, that is such truth right there. You want
Yeah.
to always be It's interesting. I find I always want to be kind of in the middle of the pack. Like I want to be giving some and I want to be learning some, but I always want to be in the pack of people who are all raising the tide together. And
Yeah.
that's a great point. So I think really Amy and her group and the way she runs this group, the way her team runs this group, actually, which is really inspiring because she has delegated that culture and that expectation down to a team that now lives it for her. Although she still shows up live and all that kind of stuff. But that's fantastic. So that's really when you've been kind of at your lowest, people have come out of that group and really help
Yeah.
engage.
It's
That's
it's that
beautiful.
that's where I found my very first clients, that
Oh
I
my
that I've been
gosh.
able to work with. It's like that's actually where the pivot happened for me because,
This
I
is
told you the
it.
story as well, right? Where I started my business more in the kind of like because I've struggled with mental health so
Yep.
much. I was like, I've picked up so many tools. Let me share some of those tools and let me see if I can figure out how to kind of make this into a business. And I couldn't. I was just like, I don't want to do one-on-one because I feel like, that's not me. I don't, I
Mhm.
feel like I don't have the energy to do that. And I couldn't figure it out. And then all of a sudden there was this whole talk about like, oh my God, how do I build my story into a website that actually converts? And there was this whole topic about this in the group.
Oh, so you
And I
made
was like,
yourself your first client almost.
it was very interesting because that was when I was still doing the mental health side of things. And then all of a sudden I realized that this is where people are struggling. And I
Mhm.
was like,
Because you
I
struggled
have,
with it.
yeah. And I've this is what I know. This is how like this is what I know to do. I see people are struggling with telling stories with their brands, how to structure their websites for the best conversions. And I've done that. I've done that for numerous clients when I was freelancing, when I was doing sales. I've done the storytelling in many, many companies before. And I was like, I can do this, but I also had this resource to share. And it wasn't my resource. And so that was when a light bulb went off in my head because I had like 70 people ask me for this resource because I
Wow.
said,
Out
you
of that
know,
one group, 70 people
yeah,
asked?
out of the little comment that I made under this one post in this whole group.
Active group, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I had 70
That's a
people ask me.
great story. So that was kind of the spark for you.
Yeah.
That is
And
beautiful. I love it.
yeah, and I was
That
just
is
like,
really
okay,
cool.
I need to and in that moment I was like, damn, why isn't this my resource? Because you cannot, share links
Yep.
directly. You have to
Yep.
tell people to DM you. And that's
Yep.
where I could count. It was almost 70 people who would ask me for this resource. And I was like, there
Okay.
are
There's a
struggles.
there there.
Yeah. There are struggles to be supported with here.
I
Right.
love that.
And that's where I just kind of pivoted the whole thing. And here's where I would also say one more thing that I've kind of thought about is from there it just kind of snowballed really quickly. And I built my website in about 2 days, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna do this. This is okay. Pivot, 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 because this, what I have been doing so far hasn't really been working. Um, Although it's mixed in. My
Yep,
mental
yep.
health awareness is always mixed in into what I'm
Part
doing.
of the story, right.
Yeah, and so and part of the stories that I tell as well, which is also a side note. I never do fear-based stories. I never do fear-based marketing because we don't need any more of that. We need
That
better
just
stories.
triggers that just triggers
Yeah,
everybody. I totally the scarcity, the FOMO, the I just it's there's not anything yeah, I'm with you. I don't often hear people say that, but I'm completely with you on that.
yeah, for sure. And so it absolutely snowballed from there, and it was very interesting. I got an opportunity to speak at a virtual summit. And it was very short notice. And I was like, okay, if I want to do this properly, I need to get myself out there. I need to start, putting myself out there and getting more clients and everything. And I got this opportunity, and this person says, okay, by, whatever, in like 1 week, you have to have those things, done. You have to have this masterclass. You have to have this freebie. It cannot be something that you do one-on-one. It has to be something digital. And first of all, when I read this whole kind of like script that she had written to me, said like, okay, here's what we need from you. Are you okay to do this? And I was like, oh my God, am I? I don't think am I going to be able to do like two, recorded master classes that are high value and that I would actually, enjoy
Yep.
listening to and everything. And it was then when I said to myself, okay, um, if I was the kind of a person who would be okay to do those things, how would I approach it right now?
Ooh, nice
Right?
twist.
Right?
If I
And
were
it's
this person, what would I
mm,
do?
and it's from this coaching training that I took a while ago, which is as well is kind of like she said, sometimes I ask my clients, so what do you think? And when they tell me I don't know, and she goes, but if you did know, how
Yeah.
would that be? Like, what would the answer be? And it's so interesting because I think the truth there underlying is that we are not, we often talk about becoming somebody. We
Mhm.
have to become this person in order to do one thing or another, or hit our goals. I think it's not about becoming something, because that part of us is always there.
Mhm.
It's just we
Yep.
have to find and sort of channel that something that's already within us, and oftentimes that requires us to kind of peel off the layers of false beliefs and sort of.
Bingo, because you really already are the person under there because you've had the idea. I love that. I actually wrote that down here for not just in the notes for the podcast, but my own notes is that is a great question to ask whenever we feel trapped. If I was that person, what would I do? And
Yeah.
it throws you out there to that spot in such a beautiful way. And I'm guessing your answer to that last question is kind of the same as this one because that was sort of the focus on who was with you in a crappy time. This one is who did you meet kind of that you went, wow, that was such an inspiration and it changed the direction that I'm going, or it brought a new opportunity, or it opened up my eyes, or that relationship exploded into multiple relationships. Like who's somebody you've met that's at your high that's helped really elevate your game? It might be that same answer now because I'm thinking you kind of just answered that.
Mm. I think it's definitely like it's those people who are going to make you see what you are, like, that the thing that you want is so in reach, right?
I
The
love it.
thing that you want is so within reach, and it is so many people, yourself included, that I have met through the group. There's somebody who reached out to me, and I read her name, and it was months ago already. I read her name on Facebook, and it said Hanna-Mari. And I'm like, okay, this is a scam.
This is somebody
Nobody has.
spoofing you.
Yeah,
I've
this
never
is
seen
the
your name before you.
right. And then it turned out that it was literally somebody called Hanna-Mari. Yes,
In Estonia as well?
she is from Finland, but she lives in Canada. She's been there for decades. And it
Uh-huh.
was just, I was like, okay, somebody's yanking me, right? Somebody's
Uh-huh.
like, that's, my
I
first
mean,
thought was,
Pam
no,
Pryor
it's
is one
true.
thing, but Hanna-Mari is another in this
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. And
That's
so
beautiful. So what happened?
we hit it off like we had been best friends for years. Like we had
Ah,
known each other from way back when. And
that's
so this is
hysterical.
so this is also a relationship which is so funny that you have those relationships that just kind of keep appearing and sort of keep being
Yes,
those kind of like like a supporting group, and you have to have that supporting group around you because we have
you do.
weekly calls now. We have we're like getting each
Beautiful.
other. We have a very similar kind of outlook on life, and we just support each other through those difficult times, because sometimes it's like as much as and my wife is helping my nervous system come out of that freeze situation with
Beautiful.
when it comes to this entrepreneurship in general.
Yep.
You know you have to also have those people who are kind of go like, yeah, but what if that actually worked? What if that
I
worked? What
love
if
that.
what you did
And
right now,
that's
what if
what
that
shows
worked?
us the opportunity. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That is beautiful. And really what I like to drive home with this podcast and why I love these conversations is that it's pointing out to people who are just starting out or that maybe down the journey and they've done it all on their own the hard way, is open your mind to a different kind of networking. It's not about networking in those rooms where you're looking, people are looking over your shoulder to find the next most important person to talk to. It's about pay attention to every relationship that crosses your path because there may be something there. And even if it's somebody that there's not a connection with, you're always going to learn something. And it's taking the hot minute to say, oh, that's what this was for. And that's what I think is just beautiful about the way you really expressed this about Amy's group, because
Mhm.
she has built it the right way.
Yeah.
Um, and we all know we can find people in there that we need when we need them. So that is just beautiful. So how can people find you? So ton of empaths out there in our listener base. How can people find you when they have resonated with what you've said here and would like to know a little bit more,
Sure. So my brand name is Heroes and Guides. So that comes from you being the guide to your
Mhm.
customer who's the hero of the story. So when it comes
Love
to
it.
brand storytelling, that's, directly kudos to Don Miller for giving me that
Mhm.
idea.
Yep.
Um, but also, I am on Instagram, so it's HMKIRS. So that's
Okay,
HM Kirs.
perfect.
That is from my name. And then you can also check out my podcast, which is the Empathic Advantage,
Beautiful.
which people were raving about your episodes on my podcast for
Well, it's a
sure.
great I had listened to it before I was even on it. It's a fantastic podcast, so I do hope people all jump over and listen. We're gonna drop all this. You will have, if you look below, wherever you're seeing this or hearing this, all of this information is in the notes there. So I really encourage you to reach out to Hanamari. It has been my
Definitely.
joy to get to know you. I'm so grateful for Amy's group that our paths crossed.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you so much for having me. And just if anybody out there is interested to learn more about storytelling for brands specifically, then heroesandguides.com/storytelling will take you to my masterclass. And if you are like, F this, I am ready to, put all my work into this and figure out my brand story because I need my, stories
It's
to convert and
time.
speak to my customers, then just heroesandguides.com/call and we can set something up for
I
sure.
love it. Don't let that you think you don't know how to market get in your way, because there are ways to do it that are totally creepless and are truly from the heart and tell your story and attract exactly the people you want to have coming into your world. So, Anamati, thank you again. Everybody have a great week. We will see you here again next week, and keep focusing on those key relationships. That's what brings the joy, and that money energy just follows. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
I hope that video was helpful, and I hope you subscribe to my channel for more information on finances in your business.